When my daughter-in-law told me I was no longer welcome in their home, I did not cry. I smiled, a small, quiet smile that did not reach my eyes. Not because I was strong, not because I understood, but because my heart had already gone quiet, like it had been preparing for this moment for a long time. I stood there, holding my purse with both hands. My fingers were tight around the handle, as if letting go would make me fall. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears.
Slow. Heavy.
The house smelled like dinner. Warm food. Fresh bread. Something simmering on the stove. It was the kind of smell that once meant laughter, shared plates, and voices around a table. That night, it only reminded me that a family meal was happening without me. My son did not look at me. He stood a few steps away, his shoulders stiff. His eyes were fixed on the floor, like it held all the answers he did not want to face. I searched his face, hoping he would meet my eyes, hoping he would speak. But he stayed quiet. In that silence, memories rushed in without warning. I remembered holding him when he was small enough to fit against my chest. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine. The way he used to fall asleep listening to my breathing. I remembered feeding him with trembling hands when I was tired, scared, and alone in the world. There were nights I cried quietly so he would not hear me. Nights I promised myself I would be enough for him. And now here we were, standing in the same room, so close that I could almost reach out and touch him, and yet so far apart that it felt like we were living in different worlds. She spoke gently.
Her voice was calm.
Careful. There was no anger in it. No sharpness. This is not working anymore, she said softly. I think it's better if you don't come back. Her words were simple.
Clear.
They did not accuse me. They did not explain much either. And somehow, that made them heavier to carry. I nodded slowly. I told her I understood. I thanked her for being honest. I even wished them well, because I did not know what else to say. My mouth moved before my heart could catch up. That was the moment I knew something precious had ended. Not with raised voices. Not with anger. Not with a fight. But with silence. The kind of silence that settles deep inside you and refuses to leave. As I walked toward the door, no one followed me. No one stopped me. The door closed behind me. Not slammed.
Just closed.
It was a soft sound, but it echoed inside me for years. This is my story. Not a story of hatred. Not a story of revenge. But a story of love. Of loss. And of learning, far too late, when holding on becomes the very thing that pushes someone away, that I raised my son alone. That sentence has followed me my whole life, like a quiet shadow that never left. Sometimes it felt heavy. Sometimes it felt like a badge of honor. Most days, it felt like both at the same time. His father left when my son was still a baby. No goodbye. No letter. No explanation. One day he was there and the next day he was gone, as if he had never existed at all. I remember that night clearly. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, my son asleep beside me. The room was dark and silent. I watched his small chest rise and fall, so steady, so innocent. He had no idea that our lives had already changed forever. I leaned closer to him and whispered a promise. I will never leave you. The words were soft, but they came from deep inside me. I meant them, with everything in me. Life after that was not easy. Money was always tight. Some months, it barely lasted until the end. I worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs, sometimes more if I could find the work. I learned how to stretch meals, how to make one pot of food last for days. I learned how to sew torn clothes instead of buying new ones. I learned how to smile in front of my son even when my body ached and my heart felt tired. There were nights I cried quietly in the bathroom, so he would not hear me. There were mornings I woke up before the sun, just to make sure everything was ready for him. I was tired, but I kept going.
Because he needed me.
My son was a quiet child, gentle, thoughtful. He liked drawing and books more than noise and crowds. After school, he would sit at the kitchen table while I cooked. He told me stories about his day, one small detail at a time. Those evenings became my comfort. the sound of his voice filling the room, the warmth of our small home. Even when we had little, it felt like enough. As he grew older, I tried to give him space. I told myself that was the right thing to do. But deep inside, I was afraid. Afraid the world would be unkind to him. Afraid someone would hurt him the way life had hurt me. So maybe I watched too closely. Maybe I worried too much. Maybe I held on tighter than I should have.
I did not know it then.
I only knew how to love the way I always had. When he met her, he was already an adult, finished with school, working, independent. He did not need me the way he once did, and that was both comforting and painful. One evening, he came home with a different smile on his face. A softer smile, one I had not seen before. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said. I was happy for him. Truly. I smiled and told him I was glad. But something inside me shifted quietly, like furniture being moved in a room I thought I knew. When I met her, she was polite, quiet, respectful. She called me ma'am at first. I told her she could call me by my name. She smiled when I said that, but her eyes stayed careful, like she was still deciding where she stood. I thought it was nerves. I thought, she will warm up with time. When they married, I cried at the ceremony. Happy tears. Proud tears. I looked at my son and felt proud of the man he had become. I told myself this was how life was supposed to be. Children grow up. They fall in love. They build their own families. What I did not realize then was how much space that new life would leave behind. How quiet my world would slowly become. And how unprepared I was for the distance that was quietly beginning to grow. At first, everything was fine. At least, that is what I told myself. We had meals together around the same table. We talked politely. We shared small smiles and simple conversations about the weather, work, and daily life. I told myself this was what harmony looked like.
Quiet.
Respectful. Careful. But slowly, almost without warning, small things began to change. My son stopped calling every day. At first, I did not notice. I told myself he was busy, building a life, being an adult. Then the calls became fewer. Every few days. Then every week. Sometimes longer. When the phone stayed silent, I stared at it more than I should have. I told myself not to worry. I told myself not to complain. I did not want to be that mother. When I visited their home, conversations felt different. Shorter. Lighter. Careful. Like everyone was choosing words slowly, afraid of saying the wrong thing. There was laughter, but it did not last long. There were pauses that felt heavy. I could sense when I entered a room, the air shifted just a little. I began noticing how she liked things done a certain way. The kitchen was organized just so. Every plate had its place. Every spoon faced the same direction. The living room was quiet. No loud television. No clutter. Everything felt calm, almost fragile, like too much movement might disturb it. I wanted to help. That was how I showed love. I cooked meals the way I always had. I cleaned without being asked. I folded laundry. I wiped counters. But something felt different this time. I could feel it in my chest. I was not helping anymore. I was intruding. I was a guest,
not family.
Once, without thinking, I rearranged the spice rack. It was a small thing, something I had done 100 times in my own home. She noticed immediately. "I prefer it this way," she said softly.
Her voice was calm.
Not angry, but clear. I apologized right away. I felt embarrassed, like a child who had crossed a line without knowing it was there. My son stood there, silent.
He did not say it was okay.
He did not say it was nothing. He said nothing at all. That silence stayed with me long after the moment passed. Another time, my son talked about his work. He sounded tired, unsure. I gave him advice. The same advice I had given him all his life. The kind that comes naturally from years of watching your child grow. I thought I was helping. Later, she pulled me aside and spoke quietly. "He needs to make his own choices," she said. Her words were gentle. Reasonable. I nodded. I told her she was right. I agreed with her. But inside, something ached deeply. Not because she was wrong, but because I felt myself being slowly erased from a role I had lived my whole life. After that, I began choosing my words carefully. I thought before I spoke. Sometimes I decided not to speak at all. I measured my visits. I watched the clock. I tried not to overstay. I tried not to be too much. I laughed quietly. I asked fewer questions. I kept my opinions to myself. But the distance kept growing anyway. I could feel myself becoming a reminder of a past life. A life filled with sacrifices, struggles, and quiet victories. A life that no longer fit into their present. Sometimes, when it rained, I sat alone at home by the window. I watched the drops slide down the glass. I remembered when my son was small. I remembered how he used to run to me when thunder scared him. How he would crawl into my arms and bury his face in my shoulder. How my presence alone had once been enough to calm him. Now he was building a life where I existed only at the edges. A shadow. Someone from another chapter. I told myself this was normal. That this was how life worked. That children grow up and move on. I told myself I should be grateful he was happy. Grateful he had found love. Grateful he had built a home. But loneliness has a way of speaking loudly at night. It fills the quiet rooms. It sits beside you when the lights are off. And no matter how much you tell yourself everything is fine, your heart knows when it is slowly being left behind. The turning point did not come with a fight. There were no raised voices. No harsh words. It came quietly, in the kind of way that changes your life without warning. I had been invited to stay for a few days. Just a short visit. Nothing special. I told myself it would be nice to spend some time together, the way we used to. The first day passed gently. We ate together. We spoke politely. Everything felt calm on the surface. But on the second night, something happened that I could not ignore. I was lying in bed when I heard their voices in the other room. They were not arguing.
They were speaking softly, carefully.
And then I heard my name, not loudly, but clearly enough that I knew it was not meant for me to hear. She doesn't mean to, my son said. But it's hard. Hard. That one word settled deep in my chest. It felt heavier than any insult. I lay there staring at the ceiling. I did not move. I did not breathe deeply. I listened until the voices faded into silence. That night, I did not sleep. I replayed his words again and again. I wondered how loving him had become something difficult to carry. The next morning, she asked if we could talk. Her voice was gentle, almost nervous. We sat at the kitchen table. Sunlight came through the window, soft and warm. The room looked peaceful, too peaceful for the weight of the conversation we were about to have. She spoke carefully, choosing each word with care. She talked about boundaries, about space, about how important it was for a home to feel calm. She said she respected me. She said she knew I loved my son. She said she understood that I meant well. But she also said she needed peace in her home. And that peace did not include me the way things were. I looked at my son. I waited for him to speak, to explain, to soften the moment. He said nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. It told me where I stood, and where I did not. When she asked me not to come back, I felt something break inside me. Not loudly, not in a way anyone else could see. Just a quiet crack, deep in my chest. I nodded. I told her I understood, even though my heart had not caught up yet. I went to the room where I was staying and began to pack. I folded each item slowly, carefully, as if taking my time might somehow delay the ending. Every folded shirt felt like a goodbye. Every closed zipper felt final. My son walked me to the door. He hugged me briefly. His arms felt unfamiliar. "I'll call," he said. I nodded. I smiled. He did not call. And in that moment, I knew that something far more than a visit had ended. The days after were empty, quiet in a way I had never known before. The kind of quiet that feels loud because there is nothing to distract you from your thoughts. I woke up each morning expecting my phone to ring. I kept it close to me, on the table, in my hand, beside my pillow at night. But it did not ring. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The seasons changed, but nothing else did. Sometimes I thought about writing a letter. I imagined the words carefully. Soft words. Loving words. Words that did not ask for anything in return. Then I thought better of it. I did not want to push. I did not want to become a burden again. So I stayed quiet. I replayed everything in my mind. Every conversation. Every look. Every moment where I might have said too much or stayed too long. Late at night, I asked myself the same questions again and again. Where did I go wrong? Was I too present? Too loving? Too involved in a life that was no longer mine to guide? Was I too afraid to let go because letting go meant facing how alone I truly was? One evening, as I sat in the quiet of my home, something painful finally became clear. Love can feel heavy when it is not released gently. Even the purest love can become a weight if it does not know when to step back. I had loved my son with my whole life, with every sacrifice, with every sleepless night, with every silent prayer. But I had never learned how to love from a distance. I had never learned how to step back and trust that he would be okay without me guiding every step. That realization did not bring him back. It did not make the phone ring. It did not open any doors that had closed. But it brought understanding. And understanding, I learned, is its own kind of healing. I began to focus on myself, something I had not done in years. I paid attention to my own thoughts, my own feelings. I started taking small walks. I sat by the window with a cup of tea. I allowed myself to feel sad without judging it. I learned to sit with the quiet,
To stop fighting it.
to let it exist without fear. The silence was still there. The loss was still there. But slowly, I learned how to breathe again within it. And in that quiet space, I began to heal. Years have passed now. Time has moved forward, even on days when I felt stuck in the past. I still think of my son every day. Some thoughts are gentle. Some still ache a little. I wonder how he is doing, if he is healthy, if he is sleeping well at night, if he still likes the same food I used to cook for him. These thoughts come quietly, without tears most days. I do not blame her anymore. I truly don't. She did what she felt she had to do to protect her home and her peace. And in time, I learned that every person has the right to create the life they need. And my son made his choice. That truth was hard to accept, but it was still his choice to make. Just as I once made mine when I promised to raise him the best I could. Love does not always stay in the way we expect it to. Sometimes it changes its shape. Sometimes it moves further away. And sometimes it teaches us lessons we did not know we needed to learn. If there is one thing life has taught me, it is this. Love your children deeply. Give them roots so they know where they come from.
So they feel safe.
So they feel supported. But also give them wings. Give them the freedom to grow in their own way. To make their own choices. To live a life that may not include you the way you imagined. Because holding too tightly can push the very people we love further away. Even when our intentions are pure. Even when our hearts are full of love. Letting go is not easy. It feels like loss. It feels like silence. It feels like learning how to breathe again in a world that suddenly feels bigger and emptier. But letting go, even when it hurts, is sometimes the last act of love we can give. A quiet one, an unseen one, but a powerful one. I still carry my love for my son with me. It did not disappear when the door closed. It simply learned how to be quiet. And in that quiet, I learned something important. Love does not end when someone walks away. It lives on in how we grow, how we forgive, and how we choose peace, even when our hearts have been broken. This is not the ending I once imagined, but it is the ending I have learned to accept, with calm, with understanding, and with hope that love, in whatever form it takes, is never truly wasted.